Imagine a government so politically paralyzed that its leaders are forced to negotiate their own survival from inside, well, an internationally fortified bunker.
Right. And while they do that, armed insurgents, a surge of maritime pirates, and even a looming viral epidemic are just waiting to exploit that vacuum.
Good morning. Today is Monday, May 25, 2026. You are joining us for a comprehensive, objective assessment of the interlocking political, security, and diplomatic events currently shaping East Africa.
You're here to deliver a factual, measured overview of the developments over the past 2 weeks. No sensationalism, just the matter of record.
Exactly. We want you to clearly understand the forces at work in a highly complex region.
Because we're observing a really rare convergence here of institutional transition, persistent security challenges, and frankly, a radical shift in diplomatic alliances.
Our aim today is to provide you with the operational clarity necessary to navigate these overlapping dynamics. We're moving past the headlines to understand the underlying mechanisms.
The actual drivers of these events.
Right. Now, this deep dive into the region's current events is brought to you by ProWave AI and is generated by Stylo News, which is an AI-powered news application.
And for your context, Stylo News is the consumer version of Stylo Intel Ops.
Yeah, a platform originally designed for enterprise operations across government, military, and business sectors. So what you are getting here is unique access to a tool specifically designed to support global decision makers.
It essentially gives you the same analytical capability as those monitoring these situations from the inside.
Exactly. It processes vast amounts of traditional reporting, satellite imagery, and social sentiment analysis to present you with a clear, unbiased operational picture.
So mapping out today's deep dive, we are tracing a ripple effect across East Africa.
We're going to examine how a political stalemate in a single compound in Mogadishu creates a localized power vacuum.
Which then pushes a breakaway state to seek controversial new allies.
Right, and ultimately leaves the entire region vulnerable to, well, a perfect storm of climate, health, and maritime crises.
So let us begin at the epicenter of regional stability, which is the federal government of Somalia.
Based on the latest intelligence estimates, the state apparatus is currently intact, but it is best described as politically brittle.
Highly brittle. As President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed's 4-year term concludes, the transition talks have completely stalled.
And the elite fragmentation there is significant enough that these electoral negotiations have been relocated to the Hiiraan compound in Mogadishu,
which is a heavily fortified enclave. It hosts foreign missions and operates under strict international observation.
So the government is conducting these talks under highly visible U.S. and foreign pressure.
Right, and that relocation to Hiiraan is a primary indicator of acute institutional fragility.
I mean, when domestic political institutions cannot manage a transition of power through normal civic mechanisms.
And they literally have to retreat to an internationally secured compound just to hold a meeting?
Yeah, it broadcasts a severe lack of internal cohesion.
Exactly. Now, the government is not in a state of immediate collapse, but this level of political distraction creates a massive administrative bottleneck.
And in security terms, this is an opportunity space.
Unquestionably. When the leadership is looking entirely inward at its own survival, governance and counterterrorism operations in contested areas inevitably degrade.
Because that bureaucratic delay, it has physical consequences. When political leaders are locked in a bunker fighting over succession and cabinet seats, they aren't efficiently signing off on payroll.
Or logistics, or strategic directives for the troops on the front line.
Right. That delay creates tangible gaps in border patrols and regional security outposts. Furthermore, conducting the business of state inside an international compound, well, it sends a highly damaging message to the public.
It really does.
It reminds me of a ship whose officers are debating the course in the navigation room while the hull takes on water. The public can see the officers aren't on the deck.
That's an apt comparison.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. If the government is confined to the Hiiraan compound for these talks, how does that visible dependence on external mediation affect their legitimacy on the streets of Mogadishu?
It is a critical vulnerability. Because when the public perceives that foreign diplomatic pressure is the primary force holding the state together, civic trust erodes. And for an insurgent group, a legitimacy-challenged government is the ultimate strategic asset.
They don't have to win hearts and minds.
No, they do not need to win ideological debates. They simply need to point to the walls of the Hiiraan compound and argue that the federal government is not truly sovereign over its own territory.
Which brings us to the immediate security ripples of this political paralysis. Because as the government focuses on the Hiiraan talks, Al-Shabaab is actively exploiting the situation on the ground.
We're seeing that clearly in the intelligence. They are not expanding openly in a conventional territorial sense.
Right, they aren't marching on capitals.
No, but they remain highly resilient. Their operations are currently concentrated in south-central Somalia, specifically the Lower Shabelle, Middle Shabelle, and the immediate approaches to Mogadishu.
And the Somali National Army, they are not remaining passive here.
No, they are not.
We are tracking active pushback, including precision airstrikes and targeted raids by Somali forces in the Lower Shabelle aimed at dismantling militant staging areas.
But the challenge is fundamentally asymmetric. The Somali National Army is attempting to secure fixed territory and protect civilian populations.
While the militants operate in rural, weakly governed areas, essentially just probing the perimeter for weaknesses.
Exactly. Al-Shabaab's strategy is deeply pragmatic. They benefit immensely from a stalled Somali government because it removes the pressure of a unified, sustained military offensive.
They don't need to capture Mogadishu in a pitched battle to be effective.
No, they simply need to preserve their freedom of movement, intimidate local populations, and exploit weak border security to conduct asymmetric operations.
So the political gridlock we just discussed is the exact mechanism that affords them the breathing room to regroup.
To regroup and to project force outward.
And we are seeing that force projected across sovereign lines. In the past 2 weeks, a deadly cross-border ambush near Mandera, Kenya, resulted in 6 killed and 10 injured.
Which is a significant development.
It demonstrates Al-Shabaab's operational reach deep into northeastern Kenya along a highly porous frontier. So here's where it gets really interesting. With the Somali National Army making tactical gains in places like Lower Shabelle, yet militants successfully executing cross-border ambushes into Kenya, are we looking at a localized insurgency or a fully regionalized conflict?
Well, the geography of their base is localized in south-central Somalia. But you are correct. Their intent and their facilitation networks are fully regional.
Right.
When a non-state armed group can cross an international border, inflict casualties on Kenyan soil, and force the Kenyan government into a reactive security posture, the insurgency ceases to be merely a domestic Somali issue.
It demands a coordinated East African response.
It does. And it also demands a heightened awareness from international actors.
Yes, looking at the threat posture to U.S. forces and embassies in the region, especially around the Hiiraan compound in Mogadishu and major diplomatic nodes in Nairobi, it is currently assessed as elevated.
Because the visible U.S. diplomatic intervention in the transition talks inherently makes American personnel a more prominent symbolic target.
However, it is vital to state clearly, based on the reporting, there is no confirmed imminent attack. We are operating in a heightened risk environment, not an active countdown.
Maintaining that objective view of the threat level is essential. Panic does not serve operational readiness.
Absolutely not.
The elevated posture is just a standard protocol response to the increased political visibility of international diplomats during a fragile transition.
Let us pivot our focus to the north now, to a diplomatic development that is, quite frankly, sending shockwaves through the Horn of Africa.
Yes, the situation with Somaliland.
While southern Somalia struggles with political unity and security, the self-declared breakaway region of Somaliland is taking aggressive diplomatic steps.
They are currently marking their 35th year of self-declared independence.
And they boast relative political stability, democratic elections, and significant economic development, especially highlighted by the strategic port of Berbera.
But they operate in a diplomatic gray zone. They function as a state de facto.
Meaning they have their own currency, their own passports, their own security forces.
Right, but not de jure. On paper, in the eyes of the United Nations, they do not exist as an independent nation.
Until December 2025, when Israel made the unprecedented move to formally recognize Somaliland.
A major shift. And building on that recognition, Somaliland has now announced plans to open an embassy in Jerusalem.
And reciprocally, Israel plans to open an embassy in Hargeisa, which is Somaliland's capital.
The geopolitical reactions to this have been swift and severe.
Naturally. The federal government of Somalia strongly condemns this as an illegal violation of their territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Furthermore, Egypt, the African Union, and the UN Security Council have all criticized the move,
warning that it actively fuels regional tension. Israel, conversely, views this as establishing a vital strategic partnership in a critical maritime corridor.
And it is easy to see why they view it that way. The Horn of Africa and the Red Sea corridor are prime geopolitical real estate.
Roughly 10% of global trade passes through these waters. This directly dictates the cost of electronics, grain, and fuel arriving at your local ports.
So Somaliland is using its 35 years of relative democratic stability as leverage to break its diplomatic isolation.
And Israel is looking for stable allies on the Red Sea amidst broader Middle Eastern tensions.
The strategic logic for Israel and Somaliland is clear, but we really must understand the intense resistance from the African Union and the United Nations here.
Right. So what does this all mean for the concept of sovereignty? If Somaliland functions as an independent state with its own elections and ports, why is the international community, from the UN to the AU, so unified in resisting this recognition?
Well, the foundational principle of the African Union, dating back to its predecessor, the Organization of African Unity, is the absolute preservation of borders as they were inherited at the time of independence. International actors are highly wary of encouraging any separatist movements.
It's essentially like an exclusive country club refusing to admit a highly qualified, financially stable new member simply because doing so might embarrass an existing, deeply troubled member.
That is one way to look at it, yes.
By resisting Somaliland's recognition, the African Union and the UN are basically saying they would rather maintain the illusion of a unified Somalia than acknowledge the reality of a fractured one.
Because the fear is the precedent it sets. Acknowledging Somaliland means acknowledging the permanent failure of the Somali federal project.
Right, the domino effect.
Exactly. If the international community officially concedes that Somaliland can legally break away because the central government failed, it risks triggering a chain reaction. There are dozens of regional secessionist movements across the African continent.
So the African Union would rather invest decades of diplomatic and military effort into rebuilding the government in Mogadishu than open the Pandora's box of redrawing the continent's borders.
Precisely.
That brings us to our fourth segment, and it requires us to broaden our lens even further because these political and diplomatic crises are currently colliding with massive environmental, health, and maritime pressures.
Let's look at the maritime domain first. The UN has just launched a new anti-piracy plan in response to a massive surge off the Somali coast.
We are looking at 286 piracy incidents and 67 hijacked ships in the past year alone.
And the underlying cause here is fascinating.
It really is. Because global superpowers are busy guarding the Red Sea further north from Houthi missiles, which is a ripple effect of the ongoing Iran-Israel conflict, they've accidentally left the back door wide open off the coast of Somalia.
International naval assets were diverted, creating a massive maritime security vacuum.
And non-state actors and pirate syndicates onshore simply walked right into that opportunity.
It perfectly illustrates the connection between onshore governance and offshore security. When the federal government is locked in transition disputes at the Hiiraan compound, and the Somali National Army is stretched thin fighting Al-Shabaab, there is virtually no domestic capacity to police the coastline.
The pirate syndicates exploit that lack of onshore authority to launch their skiffs, hijack vessels, and anchor them safely within Somali territorial waters to demand ransom.
And as the sea lanes become increasingly dangerous, the land is facing severe biological and environmental threats.
Yes, moving to the health sector. The Africa CDC and the World Health Organization have officially declared a public health emergency due to a rapidly spreading Ebola outbreak.
This is specifically the Bundibugyo strain, and it's currently centered in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
We are tracking nearly 750 suspected cases and 177 confirmed deaths. Health authorities have warned 10 neighboring countries,
including East African nations like Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania,
warning them of the immediate risk of cross-border transmission. This is not just a localized tragedy. An uncontained outbreak in a major transit hub threatens global travel vulnerability.
Containing an Ebola outbreak is primarily a logistical warfare campaign. It requires immense interagency coordination, rigorous community-level contact tracing, and highly secure borders.
Right.
When you overlay this health emergency onto a map of the region's active insurgencies, porous borders, and political instability, the true danger emerges.
You simply cannot effectively deploy health workers, maintain cold chain storage for vaccines, or enforce quarantine zones in areas that are actively contested by armed groups like Al-Shabaab.
It's nearly impossible. And to compound all of this, the Regional Climate Authority, the IGAD Climate Prediction and Applications Center backed by the World Meteorological Organization, has just released a severe environmental forecast.
Yes, there is a high probability of significantly below average rainfall for the Greater Horn of Africa from June through September 2026.
This directly threatens agriculture, water resources, and food security in a region where millions of people are already living on the razor's edge of vulnerability.
When we synthesize these data points, we see a devastating feedback loop of crisis.
We do. A lack of rain exacerbates regional food insecurity.
The surge in piracy in the shipping lanes actively threatens the safe delivery of the vital UN World Food Program shipments required to feed those affected by the drought.
And a fractured government, distracted by internal disputes, lacks the administrative capacity to coordinate the distribution of whatever international aid does successfully arrive at the ports.
It seems like these nations are juggling glass spheres. When you have an impending drought, a severe health warning from the Africa CDC bearing down on your borders, and international piracy disrupting your critical supply lines, how do local decision-makers prioritize which fire to put out first?
Well, the grim reality of resource scarcity is that it forces governments into a purely reactive posture. They manage crises simultaneously with severely limited capacity.
You just have to let some fires burn.
Unfortunately, yes. This is exactly why international capacity building and regional security frameworks, like the Eastern Africa Standby Force, are so critical. The domestic state apparatus in many of these nations simply cannot absorb this many simultaneous macro-level shocks without fracturing.
Let us transition now to our final segment. After examining the hard realities on the ground, we need to look at how the public across East Africa is reacting to these immense pressures and what we can expect in the near future.
We have parsed the sentiment analysis from the social media platform X over the past 2 weeks to gauge public perception.
Started with the hashtag Somalia, the sentiment is highly polarized.
Very polarized. There is strong, vocal anti-separatist sentiment directed at Somaliland's independence celebrations and its diplomatic outreach to Israel, with loud calls for national reunification.
However, this is matched by deep, palpable frustration over the internal divisions, stalled talks, and perceived corruption within the federal government in Mogadishu.
That polarization reflects a population caught in a bind. The data shows a public that deeply desires a unified, sovereign national identity,
but is simultaneously exhausted and disillusioned by the political realities and institutional failures preventing that unity from materializing.
Conversely, when we analyze the broader hashtag East Africa, the sentiment shifts dramatically.
It is surprisingly positive, forward-looking, and cooperative. Users are heavily emphasizing Pan-African unity, regional development, and cultural pride.
There is a massive amount of grassroots excitement regarding shared sporting events.
Yes, particularly the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations 2027 qualifiers, which are being co-hosted by Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda.
It shows a distinct public desire for collective strength and integration, standing in stark contrast to the political fragmentation we see at the state level.
That disconnect between the state and the street is a crucial data point. It tells us that despite the severe institutional challenges and security threats, the grassroots energy in the region strongly favors integration.
The public is looking toward shared culture, sports, and regional economics as a unifying force, even when political leadership falters.
And regarding hashtags related to Al-Shabaab and the African Union, there is uniform public condemnation of terrorism.
However, the African Union itself faces significant public criticism for perceived inaction and bureaucratic inefficiency.
Though users still express a strong underlying hope for an integrated United States of Africa. So as we look to the horizon, what are the key developments you should be watching for?
First, the results of the stalled transition talks in Mogadishu's Hiiraan compound. Whether they can produce a governing consensus will dictate the near-term stability of the entire state apparatus.
Second, the progression of the Africa CDC's Ebola containment protocols and border screenings across Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania.
And third, the impact of the new leadership at the Eastern Africa Standby Force, which just saw Major General Ronald Ravanga take over as director, potentially shifting how regional peacekeeping operations are conducted.
The overarching takeaway from this intelligence picture is a profound tension between institutional fragility and societal resilience.
The political gridlock and security threats are matters of record, but the societal drive towards stability, economic growth, and regional cooperation remains a powerful, active force shaping the future of East Africa.
And that concludes our intelligence overview for today. I want to drop the formal broadcast tone for a moment to step back and sincerely thank you for being here with us.
It's been a pleasure to share this analysis.
Having you as the third person in this conversation, digging into the mechanics of how our world actually works, is exactly why we do this. If you want to continue exploring the forces shaping these regions, you need the right tools at your disposal.
And Stylo News is that tool. It's a mobile and computer application that you can download right now.
It allows you to completely customize your own personal intelligence-style briefs, drawing directly from hundreds of traditional news sources and social media streams like X.
It bridges the critical gap between enterprise-level geopolitical analysis and your own personal awareness.
Subscribe to Stylo News to get AI-powered news on demand at www.stylonews.com. We also love hearing directly from you. Please request topics for future deep dives, let us know what regions you want us to unpack next, and be sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought based on the dynamics we explored today. As we watch Somaliland aggressively push for recognition and attempt to redraw the map, while simultaneously witnessing the grassroots public striving for continental integration and a shared regional identity, we have to ask ourselves a question. In the 21st century, is the true path to stability in Africa found in redrawing old colonial borders to reflect the reality on the ground, or in erasing them entirely to build a unified, borderless economic bloc?
Something to mull over until next time. Thank you for listening.